According to Ayurvedic medical science, the three items, kapha, pitta and vayu, phlegm, bile and air, maintain the physiological condition of the body. Modern medical science does not accept this physiological analysis as valid, but the ancient Ayurvedic process of treatment is based upon these items. Ayurvedic treatment concerns itself with the cause of these three elements, which are mentioned in many places in the Bhagavatam as the basic conditions of the body. Here it is recommended that by practicing the breathing process of pranayama, one can be released from contamination created by the principal physiological elements. By concentrating the mind, one can become free from sinful activities. And by withdrawing the senses, one can free himself from material association. Ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position, where he is no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman. Sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti-yoga. But the practice of Bhakti-yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti-yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti-yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality of Godhead, but one is practical and the others are difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is called samadhi. So continuing the description of the yoga process by Kapila to his mother Devahuti. In this verse, he is describing 4 of the Ashtanga, 8-fold process. Eightfold process includes yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So in this particular verse, he is addressing 4 of them: pranayama, dharana, pratyahara, and dhyana. And Kapila Deva is describing what are the effects of practicing these 4 angas of the Ashtanga Yoga. Pranayamair dahet doshan. By pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of the physiological condition. So Prabhupada has mentioned in the purport that according to Ayurveda, there are doshas in the body, and according to the dosha, one gets different kinds of diseases. And by pranayama, one can dahet doshan. One can bring about a balance of the kapha, pitta and vayu, by which one can maintain the physiological condition of the body in a good state. Dharana is to fix the mind on a certain concept of of God. And so by such dharana, by concentrating the mind, kilbishan, one can become free from sinful activities. Kilbishan, contamination, and here referring to sinful activities. Pratyaharena, pratyahara is to draw the senses from sense objects. Generally, the senses run after the sense objects, and so draw the senses from the sense objects. Eyes from form, ears from materialistic sound, the sense of smell from materialistic smells, the sense of taste from materialistic sinful tastes. So like this, all of the senses are drawn away from the objects of senses, and that's called pratyahara. And by pratyaharena samsargam, one can become free from material association. Our existence and our association with the material world, gradually we can withdraw. And dhyanena anishwaran gunan. And by dhyana, already Kapila mentioned, your dhyana should be on Vishnu, on pastimes of the Lord in Vaikunta. Already that has been mentioned. So, dhyanena anishwaran gunan. Gunan refers to the three modes of nature, sattva guna, rajo guna, and tamo guna. And anishwaran gunan, one becomes freed from the control. Ishvara means to control, and these gunas are constantly controlling us, our consciousness, our convictions, our activities, our likes and dislikes, our aspirations, our understanding of life. All of these are controlled by the three modes of material nature. When one is in sattva guna, he has one kind of a conception of life. When one is in rajoguna or tamoguna, he has another kind of a conception of life. So like this, we are under the control of the three modes of material nature. And so by dhyana, one becomes anishwaran gunan, one becomes freed from the influence, from the control of the three modes of material nature. And Srila Prabhupada points out something very interesting in the purport here. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti-yoga. But the practice of Bhakti-yoga is easier for this age. So here in the Bhagavatam we are discussing, Kapila Muni is discussing the yoga system, the dhyana yoga, ashtanga yoga system, which has all of these pranayama, asana, pranayama, dharana, pratyahara, dhyana, samadhi, all of these. And Srila Prabhupada is pointing out there is a parallel activity of all of these in Bhakti Yoga. If we see 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, if you carefully study, the 6th chapter describes the Dhyana Yoga. And if you read each of the verses and the translations, that will be completely describing that how the yogi has to fix his mind on the form, he has to practice the sitting postures, and how he has to control the mind, control the senses, control his eating, control his sleeping. And when Srila Prabhupada writes the purport, in the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada writes about the dhyana and how the yogi has to control all of these things. Invariably, in the second half of the purport, Srila Prabhupada will describe how that same kind of a control can be achieved by Krishna consciousness, by Bhakti-yoga, and how it is much more easier and also sublime. So we see this happening all through the purports of the 6th chapter. The yogi has to do this, has to do that. And then in Krishna consciousness, this is done in this way. Yogi has to control his eating. One who eats too much or one who eats too less cannot become a yogi. One who sleeps too much, one who sleeps too less cannot become a yogi, Krishna says. And then Prabhupada explains that how one who is eating too much and indulging in too much of eating, he cannot be a yogi. And then Srila Prabhupada says, as far as the devotees are concerned, they have made a determination to eat only what is offered to Krishna as prasadam. So automatically his eating is controlled. So like this, all of these practices that are mentioned in connection with dhyana yoga has a parallel in Krishna consciousness. And importantly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu points out, Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport here, that of the two, Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness is easier. So this is the important point. These two, Dhyana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, are not divergent in their objective. In the beginning of the chapter also, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that this chapter, this in the 3rd canto, describes dhyana, because dhyana is also one of the Vaishnava practices. It is also meant to understand Vishnu and realize Vishnu. So it's not having a different objective. It has the same objective as bhakti. But of the two, one is easy, one is practical, one is recommended for this age, Bhakti Yoga, and the other, Dhyana, is very difficult, not practical, and not very easy and not recommended for this age. But of course, we come across people in this world who don't know all of these things. And they use yoga, dhyana yoga, or parts of the dhyana yoga, not all of it. They take whatever, selectively what they want. Pratyahara is all very difficult. And pranayama has dahed doshan. It can improve your physiological condition. So people take advantage of all of these things. So, in fact, and then another important thing Prabhupada is pointing out here in the purport is that by dhanena anishwaran gunan, to become free from the modes of material nature and come to the spiritual platform, that is an important stage of spiritual development. In dhyana, in Ashtanga Yoga, it happens by dhyana, anishwaran gunan. And in Krishna consciousness also, in Bhakti Yoga also, the same is attained by devotional service. So what we have to appreciate here is that how the process of dhyana and the process of bhakti are facilitating us to come to the spiritual platform. Because unless one comes to the spiritual platform, one cannot come in touch with Krishna. Krishna's existence is completely transcendental. He is not a person of this world. He is not a mundane, he does not have a form, he does not have a name. His existence is not of this material world. His existence is Chinmaya. His existence is spiritual and transcendental. And so if we have to come in touch with the Lord, We also have to elevate ourselves to the spiritual platform. What does that elevation to the spiritual platform mean? And that is to become free from the three modes of material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna talks, 13th chapter, extensively about the three modes of material nature. And Krishna hints that one should become free from the modes. Immediately Arjuna asked the question, how can one become free from the modes of material nature? What are the symptoms of a person who has become free from the modes of material nature? And how does his conduct, what is his conduct? And when Krishna explains how one can become free from the influence of modes of material nature, Krishna says, Sagunan samatitya avyabhicharena bhakti-yogena sagunan samatitya brahma bhuyaya kalpate. It is by Bhakti-yoga, it is by coming in touch with devotional service, one can transcend the modes of material nature. So this is an important step, it is an important stage of self-realization and God realization. Now another thing that we must appreciate in all of these, as Srila Prabhupada explains, generally people have, especially in our country, so many different practices of Hinduism are there. We see all around us, and the different kinds of worship of the different devatas are there. So many different temples are there for different devatas, and there are different festivals all through the year, and different parts of our country, different festivals get highlighted. There is Durga Puja, there is Ganesh Puja, and all of these different pujas are there. So one may think that Hinduism is some kind of a mumbo jumbo, all kinds of worships and all kinds of gods, and what's it? What is going on? It's all, and some people are very devoted to one kind of God, another kind of God, or what's going on? It's all so confusing. Is there a consistent, clear, unambiguous, single message about God, understanding about God? Or it's a complex mix of varieties of understanding, and some people come to the conclusion you can have any understanding, it does not matter. So, how is it? How do we understand? Krishna actually explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. E yathamam prapadyante tamstathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. In that purport, Prabhupada explains, all spiritual processes are successes, are different degrees of success on the same spiritual path, spiritual perfection. So, they are all meant to take us on the same spiritual path, but different processes will result in different degrees of success. It's like telling that we want the goal of our journey. We set out, we get into the train, and we are setting out. We want to travel from here to Delhi. Now, there are different methods, there are different trains possible, and some train may take us only up to maybe say Nagpur. But when you compare yourself when you are in Bangalore and when you are in Nagpur, you have come closer to Delhi. Say further north you go, maybe Bhopal or somewhere, you have become even closer to Delhi. You may go maybe up to Agra and you have become very close to Delhi. So there are different processes and they all take us to different degrees of success. And ultimately, it is to go to Delhi, and that is another process which takes us all the way to Delhi. But this has to be understood properly. Now, so does worship of the devatas also take us to Vishnu? It will take us on the path of Vishnu, path to Vishnu. Because when we worship the devatas, there is a certain amount of a recognition of a superior God, and there is moment you recognize that there is a superior God, that implies that you are understanding that you are small and you are not big. There is a superior God. And when you understand that you are small and there is a superior God, there is a certain amount of surrender and humility and devotion created. And that is actually learning a step towards worshipping Vishnu. When one becomes more and more enlightened about who is that ultimate God, who is this Devata, where is the Devata getting the power, this is further spiritual understanding. Now, one may not have that much of a spiritual understanding, may devote himself to a certain Devata. So, such a person, and the Vedas are full of such descriptions. And the Vedas provide this description and opportunity to worship the Devatas with an incentive. And what is the incentive? You worship different Devatas, you will have different material benefits. You worship a certain Devata, you will get prosperity, you will get good health, you can get good progeny, you can get a good wife, you can get a good husband, you can get fame, you can get power, you can overcome your hurdles, you can overcome some enemies. All of these temptations are provided in the Vedas. And that is why these Vedas are considered to be flowery pushpitam vacham. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu uses the word kavitam. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye. Kavitam there, in that Shikshashtakam verse, refers to fruitive activities described in the Vedas in eloquent poetry. So very nicely the Vedas describe, you do this, you will get this benefit. Because conditioned souls are interested in all of these things. And so they can devote themselves to a certain Devata, and what is driving them is that material desire that they have. I want this kind of a prosperity, or I want good health, I want to enjoy in this world nicely. And so they devote themselves to a certain Devata. And they may get the benefit also by worshipping the Devatas. But as far as the soul is concerned, has developed an inclination of devotion and surrender and recognize that there is something more than me. I am not the all in all. I am not the controller of everything. So that is a step of surrender. So all of these are gradual processes. But the final understanding is that how Vishnu is the one who is empowering all of the Devatas. And so completely surrendering to Vishnu is the highest perfection that will take us to the spiritual world. So like this, the Hinduism has so many different practices. And we must have a proper understanding of how all of these things fit into the picture. Not just about the Devata worship. In fact, there are so many Acharyas in our system. And all of these acharyas apparently have different conclusions. Shankaracharya will say the Jagat is mithya, Brahma satya. And Madhvacharya, another acharya who came, or Ramanujacharya who came, they said, no, Jagat is satya, Jagat is anitya maybe. So like this, different arguments are there, different doctrines are there, vadas are there among our acharyas. Now, someone may come across these things and may get again confused. So what's all this? They're all acharyas, they're having different views, all contradicting each other. So what is going on? Actually, there are very, 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 very few people who have a complete and a correct understanding of all these things. Actually, yes, acharyas have come up. Shankaracharya gave a certain kind of a siddhanta, and Ramanuja opposed that one. Madhvacharya also opposed that one. And then if you see carefully, Ramanuja and Madhva also, there are differences in their doctrines. Madhvacharya refuted some of the doctrines, some of the perspectives and views of Ramanujacharya, and he said he is wrong. So when one reads all of these things, one will get completely confused. What's going on? But actually, these acharyas are not, they are not trying to confuse us. There is a way to understand all these things. According to Desha, Kala, Patra, we must understand all of this Vedic literatures, all of these acharyas, they're actually doing something very, very significant, which is to transform the consciousness of the people. Consciousness means we have our consciousness. It is about our convictions, our desires, our concept of life, what we want to do with our life, what we think we are, what we think this world is. So to bring about a right understanding, and that cannot be done very forcefully. It has to be done very gradually. And according to different circumstances, different time in the history of, say, last 2000 years, there were different kinds of conceptions in the human society. When Shankaracharya appeared, by and large, the dominant understanding of life and consciousness and understanding in India was influenced by Buddhism. And Buddhism was that there is no understanding, or there is very, very little understanding about the soul, a spiritual existence, spiritual soul. Buddha said that you have to become free from all desires and come to the stage of nirvana, where there are no more desires. And at that stage you will understand the ultimate truth is nothing. There is nothing. That realization of that nothingness is that. So that was the understanding. So Shankaracharya had to bring back the Vedic conceptions, and he had to introduce the concept of a spiritual soul. So Prabhupada explains, Shankaracharya, through his teachings, he hinted at the existence of a spiritual soul. So then there has to be a lot of discussion and Vedic understanding of the Vedas. And so Shankaracharya brought out this understanding, and a spiritual soul, concept of a spiritual soul became accepted in the society. Then Ramanujacharya came and he said, yes, this spiritual soul, what is its final destination? In that final destination there is something known as the Vaikuntha. Just like the soul is spiritual in quality, there is also an existence there is a realm which is spiritual, and that is where the Supreme Soul, Vishnu, resides. And there are activities there. There is life there. One can transfer himself to that spiritual realm. So these kind of ideas, Ramanujacharya and to a large extent Madhvacharya, both of them brought about. So they were all of these acharyas were addressing the ignorance, the shortcomings in the understanding that was prevalent in their societies, and gradually making a progress towards more and more accurate understanding and complete understanding of the absolute truth. So that's how there may be different acharyas, but we must understand all of these things, how in different times they taught these different kinds of ideas. Now, there were in today's world, sometimes people come across different religions. And they think that, oh my God, this religion says so-and-so is the God, this religion has some other God, that religion has another. What's happening again? All of these looks very, very confusing. Now, if there are different gods for different religions, what is the relationship between the gods of these different? Do they talk to each other, or there is any relationship among them? What's going on? Again, all kinds of confusion. Now again, we must correctly understand that all these different religions, once again, they are all referring to that same one supreme God. But again, these different religions were taught in different parts of the world at different times. And so according to that kind of an ignorance that existed in that society, the teachers of these religion, the prophets or the messengers of God, they taught about God to the extent that they can appreciate. And hence, there may be some variations in some of the practices that are recommended in all of these religions. But we should not worry about that. We should see that all of them are aiming towards the same supreme God. So now you see, like this, if we carefully study, we get a very, very harmonious picture. It is not that all of these different religions, or within Hinduism, all of these different practices, it is not a bunch of confusing ideas. There is a unity of purpose. There is one single internally consistent understanding, and one, according to the ability, one can progress to different extents in understanding that final truth. So this is the kind of a harmonious picture that we understand, and this understanding is very rare. And this understanding comes about when we receive the knowledge in parampara. This is the advantage of receiving the knowledge. In fact, the right way to receive knowledge, Vedic knowledge, is by parampara, not by any other method. And if we are fortunate, we will get linked up to the parampara, which has been preserving and presenting the accurate understanding of the Vedic literatures in full spirit, in essence, in purpose, in objective, and present that up to the present age. If one is not fortunate, one will not come in touch with this parampara knowledge, or will come in touch with a certain understanding which is not the highest understanding. So that is why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's guru, very carefully traced the parampara from Krishna to Brahma to Narada to Vyasa, and all the way down up to the present time. And he said, this parampara has understood the original message of Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Vedic literatures. And in this parampara, these acharyas understood it correctly, and they have passed this down these generations. And this understanding is the correct understanding and should should be spread all over the world. And that is why our parampara praptam, parampara receiving of the knowledge, is very important. Opposite of parampara receiving of knowledge is receiving knowledge or understanding by speculation. You theorize, you make up, you read a Vedic literature and you cannot understand what this is there, that is there, and then you try to make up your own conclusion by creating an explanation with your intelligence. That is called understanding Vedic literatures by speculation. That is not the right method. This knowledge is received in parampara. Evam parampara praptam. This knowledge is parampara praptam, received. It is not by speculation praptam. It is parampara praptam. And so there was one occasion when Srila Prabhupada was explaining different concepts and the devotees were asking questions, and then Prabhupada was clarifying all these things. And then the devotees said, Srila Prabhupada, you explain all of these things so clearly. Otherwise it used to be so confusing for us. Some of us had read some books on yoga. Some of us had read some books on the Bhagavad Gita, some Hinduism, Buddhism and all of these things. And it was so confusing. Now you make things so clear. So wonderful it is. So Srila Prabhupada said, this is not something extraordinary that I have done. I am simply canvassing on behalf of the disciplic succession. This is how Srila Prabhupada responded. This knowledge, this clear knowledge about what is happening in all of these different practices and rituals and beliefs within Hinduism, different opinions and doctrines of the different vadas of the different acharyas, or different religions in the world, or different kinds of philosophies that exist in the world. All of these things we get a clarity, we get a clear picture when we come in touch with the parampara. This is a very rare thing. Very few people in the world have a clarity of understanding of all these things. So we are so very fortunate that we have come in touch with this kind of a knowledge. We have been so blessed to come in contact with this parampara of exalted acharyas who understood this message, who realized it and passed it on. And our acharyas, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because down the ages, different kinds of mixed understanding comes about. People get confused. That pristine, pure knowledge, preserved and passed on, and we coming in touch with that, it's a very rare. That is why it is said, Brahmanda Brahmite, Kono Bhagyavan Jeev. One has to be a Bhagyavan. Otherwise the souls, millions and millions of souls are there. And they are all transmigrating from one universe to another universe. Brahmanda Brahmite, Kono Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade, Paya Bhakti Lata Beach. So we have been blessed with that kind of a situation. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki.